I noticed about you right off. But I'd like to pause and let's just kind of talk a little bit about your team.
Okay.
And I'm saying it tongue in cheek because I think the people are going to be in for a treat there. Tell us about your team.
Okay, there are two of us who work in the office of the Black Business Association. It's myself as president, and our director of communications is a gentleman named Myron Mays. Now, I kid Myron all the time because Myron has more jobs than a Jamaican on the television show In Living Color. In addition to working with us full time, Myron serves as a radio personality over at Soul Classics 103.5 FM radio. He also writes a column every week for the Tri-State Defender newspaper. He also has What's Happening Myron, which is a brand. He has a publication and he has a newsletter, and he also does a book club. And I don't know what book, they read fiction, I don't read fiction. So,
awesome.
So I've never attended one of his book club meetings, but they're going to, and he's going to this Thursday, he's going to have a watch party for the final episode of Scandal.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where it is yet, but it's going to be a big deal. You can call Myron at 526-9300 if you want to attend his Scandal watch party.
All right.
So Myron's he's a very engaging gentleman. He's a very special fellow.
Yeah.
Has a number of interests, and he's good at a number of things. In addition to being our director of communications, he's our director of development. Super. And he saved us so much money because I first met Myron back in 2000 when Myron had his own business. He had a business where a communications business where he did screens and that such thing for videos and that such thing.
Correct. And
we engaged him to do our Benny Awards that year, and now Myron works for us, so it just turns around.
Wow. Well, since we're there, let's go ahead and mention the Benny Awards. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's not often that you'll find a leader that really gives praise to his or her people. But this, in my opinion, is just another sign of a true leader. So I applaud you there. So since we're at the Benny Awards, tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay. The Benny Awards, BENNY, is an acronym for Black Entrepreneurship and Networking Need You. It was begun back some years ago by Clarence Ron Mann, who was at that time the chairman of the board of the BBA. And we began to recognize the successes of the persons in business in our community. And I think it was a great idea. They did this way back in the early 80s. And since that time, we've been recognizing the successful business persons each year. And it's good to do this. It's good from time to time to pause and acknowledge those who are doing things the right way and give them some praise and encouragement to others to see how it's been done that way so they can model their own businesses after the successful ones that have been in existence for some time now.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, you know...
I'm sorry. And the Benny Awards will be held on June 21st at the Marriott East. That's the one on Thousand Oaks at 11:30, and the keynote address will be delivered by Mr. Ron Busby, who is the president of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. Ron is he's from Arizona originally, and my nephew lives out in Arizona, and it's interesting because a lady from Arizona called me and encouraged us to join, and we only recently became associated with the National Black Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. And that's pretty exciting. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, since this is going to be aired globally at some point, we are talking about the fine southern city of Memphis, Tennessee, and we are talking about the year 2013 or 2013. Now, you mentioned something earlier.
All right.
And you are, I tell you, you're as sharp as a tack, as they used to say.
All right.
You said earlier that you were uniquely equipped, and I agree. You are uniquely equipped for this role. Now, we've talked about a number of roles that you serve in. Of all of them, which do you enjoy most?
I get a thrill when I help someone win some business and put some money in their pocket. I do. I'm renewed every time that happens. And I guess that is the greatest satisfaction I get out of my job. But I also, interestingly enough, I also derive some satisfaction when I keep someone from making a bad decision about a business. There was one gentleman who was thinking about opening a shop where he sold T-shirts, and he had already sold them out of the trunk of his car. And I decided to business. And he told me that they wanted to open a restaurant, but they couldn't, because his mother cooked well, they couldn't find a restaurant, so he's going to do this instead. And I only began asking questions. I used my book.
Absolutely.
and I began asking questions of how you decided to get in this business, what would be the advantage of going to you rather than Macy's, which is around the corner from you. You know, I went to Macy's, I could buy some handkerchiefs, a necktie, some shoes, some socks, and I could only buy, and a t-shirt, where I could only buy a t-shirt at your shop. And he realized that a year and a half later, he came back and thanked me for saving him from going into that business, because they're going to use some of the money and his equity in his mother's house to establish the business. And you certainly don't want to see that go down the pipe.
Good
go
for
down
you.
the drain. Well, good for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Better for him.
Yes, indeed. Well, you know, there's always the other side of the coin.
Sure.
So I do want this to be a learning experience for some people out there too.
Okay.
So share with us something that maybe has been a bit challenging and maybe even frustrating for you. Sounds pretty long list, huh?
It's interesting. Appreciate this. What I do is I try to help women-owned businesses and minority businesses be successful by improving their revenues. I'll leave it to them to manage their businesses, the operations of their business. But I'm hopeful of getting them contracts where they can improve the revenue streams in their businesses. Interestingly enough, anytime a person wins some business, someone else may have lost a bit of business. And it looks like if you're not careful, you'll be in the business of robbing Peter to pay Paul, in which case you will have the contempt of Peter and the praise of Paul.
Yeah.
But I approach it a little bit differently. What I'm trying to do instead is to increase the size. If there's a pie, there's 100% of the people, increase the size of the pie so that more people can participate.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes, indeed.
Expand the circle of opportunity, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you mentioned something earlier, and I said at the beginning of the show that I have to make sure that I increase my pace with you, because I know that you're a quick thinker.
Okay.
And you already positioned this, but I'd like to come back and talk with you about it some more.
Okay.
Once again, I've been in your office or been in your presence where someone has come to you and says, you know, I'm just sick and tired of working for this darn company that I'm working for. I want to start my own business. I'm sure you've heard that countless times over the number of years you've been in your position. Sure. Now, with having heard that so many times, what's the most frustrating thing about hearing that and then people coming to you and saying, well, I've started a business?
Well, there is a quote by Robert Montgomery Knight, the basketball coach, Bobby Knight. It is, the will to win is not as important as the will to prepare. Providence favors the prepared mind. And luck goes to the person who's well prepared. And if somebody's going into business, I ask them what steps to what extent have they investigated the business, and what could they anticipate, what do they know about the business. Then I ask them, do you know who the top 4 or 5 people in your business in this sector are in Memphis or in the world? If they don't, they may be in the wrong business. Wow. If you don't know the top people in the business that you decide to be in, you don't know who they are and how they got there, you may not be in the right business, or it may not be the right time for you to go into this business. Knowledge is power. And the more you know about a business, the better off you are when you start. For example, if you wanted to start a restaurant, I would recommend to you that you first go work at a restaurant as busboy, cook, bottle washer, the person who cheer, and as a waiter as well. Then you'll know all there is to know about the business from the bottom floor to the top. And you'll also be able to slow shrinkage in your business as well, or people ripping you off for your money.
Absolutely.
And the better prepared you are, the more you improve your chance of being successful. And I would recommend that anybody who's going into business study the business. And today, what I used to do would be, when I was in sales at UPN 30, I would go to the library and study the background of a business. I'd get a copy of it costs 20 cents a sheet of the annual report, and I'd know as much as I possibly could about the business person, and the people who run the business before I made a sales call or even an initial telephone approach. And people appreciate the fact that I did that background work. I became someone other than a person selling spots and dots, but I became a person who had value as a consultant and a consultative salesperson, if you will.
Right.
It was always gratifying if they'd ask me, I want you to start placing my television advertising and buying my radio time. Of course, I always said no, but I always try to get my 30% share.
Always closing and always thinking about maximizing.
Of course.
That's really important, and just focusing on that is really what business is all about, because I believe it was Creflo Dollar saying during one of his sermons one day that if you have a business card but you're not making any income, it's merely a habit, or a hobby rather. And we know a number of people who have cards that really have hung their shingles out, and they're really, they have a habit. I mean, a hobby, rather.
I understand.
And so you are really working as much as you can to avoid that.
Exactly. I'm working to help people, because I go to bed every night thinking about people in business and people who are going to go in business and how I can make them successful. I wake up every morning thinking about the same thing. Even when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm thinking about 2 or 3 people who I can help that day. And it's interesting, but we have some successes, and they're memorable and they're rewarding. I'm thinking of one person in particular right now who came to our office, and he was doing real well in the business he was in. He's expanded it, and he's doing some different things now, and he's commanded a new contract with a major corporation in the city, and they are very pleased with his work.
Yeah. Well, we haven't, this is like running a 100-yard dash, you and I sitting here, because to me it feels like we really haven't hit the 20-yard mark where we really stand up and start warming up. So we're about to close out.
Oh, really?
But there are a couple of things that I really have to get out.
Go.
First and foremost, I know that we've talked about you and your role as a businessman.
Sure.
But now I'd like to talk with you about your role in the community.
All right.
My wife and I had the pleasure and the honor of viewing you or listening to you and watching you present to a group of exceptionally gifted young people. And I'd like for you to quickly tell us about that, because there are 2 other points I've got to ask you before we leave.
Okay, that was fascinating. I delivered the keynote address at the Stax Academy at their awards program 2 Fridays ago. Yeah, 2 Fridays ago. It was rewarding, and I want to thank you, Justin Merrick, for asking me to make the presentation. Interestingly enough, what I did before that, because I began asking people who gave the commencement address when you graduated high school, and nobody remembers.
Yes.
Now I do, because, well, I was on the program, but we did, and at my class graduation, we did not have a person deliver a keynote address. We did an investment service, Dr. Benjamin Lawson Hooks. Anyway, nobody knows who, so I had a moment, I asked for a moment to meet with the seniors before I made the address, and we connected, and when I made the address, they were listening, and it went off really well. And I have to say this about the Stax Academy. Great work is going on over there. Great work is going on over there. And I want to salute the chairman of the board, Ms. Carolyn Hardy, Mr. Kirk Whalum, Justin Merrick, and everybody associated with Stax Academy. They're doing great work. Awesome work over there. And let me say this about Kirk Whalum. Can I say this?
Absolutely.
Let me tell you something. This is a man who is doing the work that I told his brother. I saw Pastor Whalum last Monday. I spoke that Friday. I saw Pastor Whalum at BAM the following Monday. I said, Pastor, I'm a big fan of yours and your wife's. I love the way y'all do marriage. Y'all solid. But your brother, I respect your union and the way you do things. But your brother, I feel like I would wash his feet.
Yeah.
Because here's a gentleman who's traveled in his craft. He's developed he's an expert in his craft. He's internationally known, and he decides to come back home and teach youngsters to do what he's done. That's awesome. That's God's work. That's God's work.
I want to finish out with this.
Yes.
I don't want to cut you off,
All right.
but that's a great spot.
All right.
He has come back to do something to make a change in Memphis.
Yes.
And that's what is needed.
I agree.
Now, you are native Memphian. Now, we've only got just a few seconds.
Okay.
And I need to ask you this question and ask you if you could, we'll close out with this.
Okay.
If there's one thing that you could change in the Memphis area, what would that one thing be, and how would you make that change?
Okay, couple of things. I had to make 2. First thing I would do, I work VLT. Anybody's been in sales probably for a long time probably had a sales manager say, we work on Vince Lombardi time. I call it VLT. Okay. And I do. I'm at meetings 15 minutes early. Vince Lombardi times means this, folks. If the meeting starts at 8 o'clock and you